And welcome back to Fully Equipped. J-Wall, serial killer, RB. You know, I would tell you that Uncle Gene is here, but unfortunately, as we record this podcast, he noticed that there is an epic sunset, I believe is what he said, and he has now disappeared. Literally disappeared. I'm wondering if he's going to come back in with pants on. Oh, he's back. He's back. No wine, no cheese.
I got my pants on. Did you guys start without me?
Uncle Gene is back.
Bitch. Oh, you got to look at your phones. Oh my God. We have to share this with our, look at that thing. Come on, look at your phones right now. It was well worth it.
Gene, you're Doug from what was it? The movie Up, where he's like the dog that has the talking collar, and he's like, "My name is Doug Squirrel." You just give him something shiny, and he runs off in another direction.
It is a pretty good sunset. I gotta admit. All right, well, I'll show it. Let's see if we can see it. There we go.
Come on, that's a pretty damn good one.
Pretty good. And you know what? If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple or any of your podcast mediums,
sucks to be you.
You know what?
Should be on YouTube.
It doesn't suck to be you. Just go over to the Fully Equipped YouTube page at Fully Equipped Golf on YouTube and watch us, and you can actually catch the picture that I showed from my phone of the sunset. There's my way to get you to watch us on YouTube.
Over Sneaky. The Pacific, because the sunsets are pretty epic this time of year.
Man. So. Yeah, as I was about to say, they got to be pretty good. All right, got a lot to talk about this week. Just always want to check in with everybody. How we doing?
Doing all right. I'm just waiting for golf season. This is unbelievable. I cannot believe how long.
I saw you out there, RB, taking some wax.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. Well, I'm trying to do the conversion here. I want to say like 18 to 20 mile an hour winds in the face on a driving range. So you're just eating dirt the whole time, which is kind of fun. But I think, I swear that it's supposed to get better this weekend. We'll see what happens.
RB, inform me. What is this thing you call golf season? I'm unfamiliar with it. Please enlighten me. It's got
to be very triggering for
it's usually between the Masters and the November. Let's call it early November. You can get some really nice days in November, but it sunsets at 4:30, but it's nice days. So that would be what we would traditionally in the Northeast call a golf season, Gene.
Okay.
So yeah.
Golf. There's non-golfing days. Those are days that it rains. Other than that, it's pretty much game on the rest of the time. So just being an asshole over here with myself.
Yeah, we're already mid-90s in Arizona. I mean, here in Scottsdale and Phoenix area, mid-90s, sun, and we are gearing up for summer in April. No big deal.
Yeah, you want to know who else is hot right now? Scotty Scheffler, Nelly Korda. My gosh. I mean, seriously, the golf that those two are playing. And somebody brought up a really incredible idea. So this week is the Zurich, which has become a team event. What the PGA Tour should have done, and credit to those, I just saw it in passing on social media. Scotty should have been a late entrant, and they should have paired him with Nelly to see if they could win it.
Ooh,
that could have been one hell of an idea. You want to generate some real interest? There you go. That'd been amazing, But they're playing on another planet right now from everybody else in the golf world.
I read something interesting that Norman said that Scheffler's winning because all the live golfers, and I went back and looked at this last week's tournament, and his 19 under would have won all 5 previous years. So golf's a weird game where. You take weather out of the equation. So for 5 years, you kind of normalize that, but you got to shoot a number, and he shot 19 under. The point being, we're seeing something exceptional here, regardless of the competition. And he didn't wilt at the Masters when he had the best in the world coming after him. So he's shooting numbers and beating everybody else, and it's really amazing. The amount of chip-ins this guy has is just otherworldly. I mean, it's anytime he has a club in his hand, he's dangerous. I mean, it's like you're going to see something potentially amazing happen. It's wild to watch.
I think one of the most interesting elements of like the whole thing, and it's actually the same with Nelly as well, because it is like there are a lot of parallels. They both put TaylorMade gear. I'm sure they're ecstatic over there in Carlsbad somewhere, but it's the fact that they're both have had these win streaks. I know Scotty didn't win, but he came second. But extremely different golf courses. Nelly won a match play event. They've played in wind. They've played in the desert. They've played everywhere. To go from the Masters wide open, blasted anywhere, not anywhere, but it's a comfortable driving golf course in general. And then go to Harbortown, which I saw last year for the first time, and it is like. You always hear it like TV doesn't do it justice. TV literally doesn't do it justice. It is insane, like the how tight it is, and he still just went there and won. And it's like this guy's kind of winning everywhere. Like ball striking and short game is going to win you a lot of tournaments, and like he's just demonstrating that. Same with Nelly. I think the stat I saw was when she hits the fairway, she hits the green 87% of the time. That is a freaking big number, folks. That is a big number. Okay. Like it's just like, it's unreal golf. It's pretty cool to see, like, I think a couple times earlier this year, it's like, what are we going to talk? Like, what is going to happen? Like, who is going to take off on the men's tour, the women's tour? Like, where is this parity? And cause we saw some not like less than well-known winners early in the season, and Scotty Scheffler's like, look out, boys. And it's great to see. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. It is really fun to see because we haven't seen a player dominate like this since Tiger. And Scotty Scheffler is not Tiger Woods, to be clear. He doesn't have the global reach. Scotty didn't have his hello world moment, but it is still really cool to see a guy just go out there and just lap the field. And then when he shot 63 during the third round, and everybody else just goes, "Oh God, not again." It's that feeling. It's deflating. Like, I'm sure if you were out there in your tour pro, like all the energy goes out the window, because you're like, okay, we're all playing for second. And that's exactly what would happen when Tiger would do that. Is everybody else is like, man, I don't have that. And he's so good. I mean, I was seeing stats on Scotty, and not to take anything away from Nelly, because what she's done to win 5 in a row on the LPGA Tour with that quality out there is absolutely insane. But again, we're biased because we spend a lot more time focusing on the PGA Tour, but I did see that I think he's like a stroke and a half better off the tee than Xander Schauffele, who's number 2. I mean, a stroke and a half off the tee on the PGA Tour.
That's massive.
I was talking to Adrian Rietveld when I did the story on Scotty's driver testing to get into TaylorMade QI10. And he said, and this is something that still sticks with me from our interview. He said, what makes Scotty so dangerous is that he's not only accurate off the tee, he's long. And he said that trying to keep up with that combination over the course of 18 holes is so difficult that a lot of guys they fall apart at some point. And I believe that he's so good. He doesn't make any mistakes off the tee when he hits it. That, I mean, what are you going to do Tiger Woods, at least, like, to Tiger's credit, he was an incredible escape artist. That guy could get up and down from anywhere. Scotty doesn't have to worry about that because he's so freaking accurate off the tee. From that point forward, he's so good with his irons. You're just like, I mean, man, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to throw up a 63 today and hope that Scotty misses some putts. But oh, by the way, he doesn't have a misbehaving putter anymore. He's got a putter that actually makes putts. So yeah, he's about as close to unbeatable. And this is going to sound crazy, and I'm sure the people out there listening, they're going to be like, you're nuts. I really think he has a chance to do the Grand Slam this year. Who else is in the same realm as Scotty Scheffler right now? I don't think anybody is. I think he's so good. I think he's going to go to the PGA, a golf course that Valhalla is not a scary golf course. I think he's going to go to Valhalla, and I think he's going to lap the field. And then I think he's going to go to Pinehurst. And again, he's so good off the tee, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Gene pointed it out. So good up and down around the green. I think he's going to win at Pinehurst. And I think he's going to go to the Open Championship with 3 of the 4. I'm calling it here now. Scotty Scheffler will win the first 3. He will go to the Open with a chance for the Grand Slam. Not the Tiger Slam, but the legit Grand Slam.
There's one variable here that we have not accounted for. That is Meredith Scheffler pushing out a baby.
Yep.
And new dad perspective kicking in. That is something that is, going to happen. I mean, they seem very grounded as a couple. I don't know anything about them. So very much just what you see from the outside. But they seem like they support each other very well. And, Scotty's got himself, nearly $20 million this year. So I'm sure there's a few ways you could, find some help and find your time.
I'm sure they could find some help. Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be okay. But it is just one of those like interesting things, right? Like he talks so much about like his faith, his family, and all of those things. And so to see what that will do to his golf game, and I don't think. I'm a dad of 2 girls, and like it didn't change my golf game. It's the same. Not that it was great or bad before, but it's kind of the same. So I don't really expect a man that just really focuses on fundamentals and takes things pretty simple is gonna have his golf game really change that much.
I remember a quote. I can't remember the tour player, but I remember the quote. It was like Tiger at his peak. One of the guys that was competing against him said, the only things that are going to slow this guy down are a bad marriage or a bad back. And he nailed both.
Yeah.
It's kind of life. But I go back to after he won his first Masters. I remember the week after we were talking about it. And we're like, where's Scheffler going to be at the end of the year? And we're like, he's probably a one and done, for majors type thing. He just didn't. He's so unassuming in his game at that point. This game is so incredibly difficult, and to operate on that high level and to do so for that long without slipping, without, we're watching something historical without a doubt. And it really is. It's really fascinating to watch. And to Jaywell's point, I wouldn't bet against him. He's going to be the hands-on favorite in the remaining 3 tournaments. And it's kind of, the interesting part is how bad does he want it? Does he want it Tiger-wise? Or does he want it? Or does he want it Rory-wise?
He's uber competitive. He's uber competitive.
Yeah.
He wants it way more than people realize.
Yeah. My only criticism of Scheffler, and this is totally selfish from the game of golf, he's too unassuming. He's too he's so kind of genuine and humble.
That's his upbringing. You can't change that.
No, I know. No, it's I'm not criticizing him as a man. I'm saying there's a reason that I think viewership was down. He's your classic country club golf pro kind of guy, not, in this age where we're looking for an edge and everything like that.
You need a mix of like Bryson and Brooks Koepka. If Scotty was a mix of Bryson and Brooks,
yes, yeah. he'd be off the charts. And I think hopefully what I'm hoping is that is just raw talent and winning will eventually, win people over. And it's no criticism against him as a man or a golfer. It's just simply the media age that we live in. You've got to have an edge one way or another to get people to tune in, basically.
One way that he definitely has had an edge recently is on the greens. And, for our listeners out there, another way that they can find an advantage on the greens is by giving one of these new reverse taper grips from Golf Pride a try. Oh, I got you there. Because the thing is, the moment before impact is the most critical part of putting because it controls face angle. And face angle has such an important impact on where the ball is going. And with reverse taper, what it does is it completely, literally flips the design of a grip upside down and puts the smaller portion in your top hand and the larger portion in your bottom hand. That's why, as the name says, it is a reverse taper grip. This grip comes in 3 different shapes and 2 different sizes. It has a round grip, which is universally popular for a lot of different putting techniques, a pistol style grip, which has a much larger pistol handle in the top hand, which is a little bit flatter, so it kind of really fits into your palm for players who are traditional, we'll say, backhand low or not. If you're right-handed, it's right-hand low, okay? Like, look, we're talking to right-handed golfers here. And then there's a flat, which is great, which has a more oval upper style, which works for a lot of golfers who prefer more of a parallel style putting grip. So if you're kind of more palm to palm, or you're just kind of offset by a slight amount, the flat offers a really good option for players who putt in that style. And again, they come in medium and a large style. That's a whole like Seinfeld thing. We could get on that in a minute, but we'll just stick to that. They are available now in stores, kind of anywhere you can find them, and you can find them at golfpride.com. Again, Scotty doesn't use one of the things. He uses one of the pro style cord grips, but he's one of the best players in the world. If you are struggling with your putting and you are looking for something that is going to offer you more control and tests better versus a standard parallel style putter grip at impact, give the reverse taper a try. Go out to golfpride.com to learn more, and you can order them now.
There we go. Before we keep going, shout out to Jay, who was our Masters winner. He won the Cobra season opener driver. You know, some people ask, like, why don't you shout out or tag the people who won? Like, a lot of them don't want to be tagged. Like they just would prefer to win these giveaways in peace and not get bombarded by other people.
I say not have people blow them up and trying to get it.
Yeah, probably that. But Jay actually won a Cobra season opener driver from us and went to the Masters in the same week. Not bad.
Oh, dope.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty good week for Jay. So anyway, congrats to him on winning that driver. All right, so I want to still keep it in the Scotty realm because I have a question, and I want to get specifically I want to get Kris's take here. So I would say if we're looking, we're now almost 4 full months into the tour season, and I would say, and you guys can disagree with me if you want, but I would say that nobody has had a better start to the season than TaylorMade. And I don't really know if it's close. Now, a Titleist, I will point this out because not a lot of press has been made on this, with the exception of Titleist, banging the drum. But Titleist has won 16 of the first 18 events on the PGA Tour this season. That's a really good clip. It's golf ball. Thank you. Yeah. Golf ball. Titleist golf ball. I think that's really good. Now, Titleist, it's been used by like 70% of the field to start the year, golf ball. So, their odds of doing anything from week to week is considerably higher than other manufacturers who have golf balls out on the PGA Tour. But TaylorMade, my goodness. So they have Nelly Korda, they have Scotty Scheffler, and then also last week they announced that they were signing 15-year-old Miles Russell to an NIL deal. And Miles Russell goes out and makes the cut on the Korn Ferry Tour, becomes the youngest to ever do it at 15 years and 5 months. And it just makes me wonder.
Say really quickly, I know we're going to get TaylorMade in just a second, but listen, if you're a grinding KFT Tour player, and no offense, I know you are a fantastic golfer. You're a professional golfer at a level that I will never reach. But if you are out there and some 15-year-old kid comes out there and kicks your butt, you should be banned from playing for like 2 months. Be like, listen, guys, you had your shot. This 15-year-old kid who's like 5'5" and 140 pounds just came out here and whooped your tushes, all right? You know what? You got to wait till June till you get to tee it up again, all right? We're going to let some new crop come in here and see what happens because honestly, like, you are full-ass grown men who just got your butt kicked and you are pros. He is competing against 13 and 16-year-olds week to week. And yes, he's a great player. And golf is one of those sports that you are not playing against other people. You are playing against the golf course and the elements, which is a really cool component of the whole bit. But still, he kicked my butt. I'm just telling you, I know that's a fact. I'm not going to stand here and be like, oh, no, he's not going to kick my butt. No, he would smoke me, all right? And if you are a touring professional who is trying to make it to the PGA Tour and some 15-year-old comes out and kicks your butt, how do you go home to your partner and be like, well, sorry I made the cut this week, but the kid from the high school just top 20, sorry. Like, how do you explain that? It's just like, anyways, sorry. Yes, TaylorMade has been on a roll. And this little kid, it's not little kid, sorry, Miles. This young junior player gets to play this week tay because he finished in the top 20. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and all credit to Miles for the incredible week. But it makes me wonder, and this. I think a lot of it is maybe recency bias because last week I did a story for golf.com. I chatted with David Abeleys, who's the president CEO for TaylorMade, and it was more along the lines of like, what's a Masters win worth to TaylorMade? And he mentioned that there's a multiplier that happens and they get more interest and more conversions meaning sales when a guy like Scotty wins, more interest in the putter and the golf clubs in his bag. But Kris, it makes me wonder, like, what is this run that TaylorMade's been on? What is that having? Is that having any sort of an effect on like True Spec sales? Are you getting more interest? Because I feel like True Spec's probably a really good barometer for like people out there wondering, like, do people really care about this? Do they really care that Nelly and Scotty are winning so much, and specifically with like QI10? Does that translate to more sales or interest at True Spec in the fitting base?
So, I mean, interest, absolutely. And you get people coming in and specifically asking for product by name. They want to test it. They want to see it. They want to hit it, see what it does for them. Does it translate necessarily into more sales? Not necessarily. I mean, since we have a fitting approach that is brand agnostic, we fit the player, not the product. We don't care who makes it or what it is. I don't know if it necessarily correlates directly to more sales because, I mean, we're going to put the TaylorMade QI10 lineup in play in the majority of driver, fairway, hybrid type of fitting scenarios. And if that's the one that performs best for the player, that's the recommendation we're making. I mean, regardless if it's performing well on any tour or not, if it performs for my player, that's where the recommendation's going. I mean, I will say this crop of drivers, like we've talked about previously, is fantastic. And they are performing and they do show up in that fitting environment. And I mean, we are moving quite a few parts in that fitting environment. And we're seeing quite a few parts move out the door from Fairway Jockey as well, our online retailer. So there's definitely a buzz. People are asking questions. People want to test it. So yeah, it's success on tours, plural, multiple tours, means more people inquiring and at least being curious if it's right for their game or not.
You mentioned something interesting there, Kris, and I think it's really important. Is like there's a difference between like the custom fitting environment and the way people purchase. But if people are looking to purchase online, a great place they can do it, which you did mention, is fairwayjockey.com. It offers the world's most extensive collection of aftermarket shafts and custom equipment built to tour level specifications. And they offer the lowest prices on custom built clubs, up to 20% less than the average club fitting quote. And for those fully equipped listeners, you can use code fully equipped for 10% off. And that gets you, up to 30% off against the leading club fitting company when we're talking about ordering clubs, custom built to your specs. And the other thing Jonathan, you mentioned the Masters driver. When golfers are looking for these limited edition drops from all kinds of companies, Fairway Jockey does have them. They do and did have the Masters driver. I don't know if they still have them right now. This is all, it's dated whenever you're listening to this. But they do carry a lot of these small batch and limited releases. So again, you go to fairwayjockey.com, use code fully equipped, take an extra 10% off your next purchase, and check out all kinds of cool gear there as well. Look at that. Snuck that one in there. But it is true. This is not part of the read anymore. But I will say, from my experience working in just the big box retail or like online, when people would just like purchase things and you'd see kind of the fluctuations, right? Malbon sold a whole bunch of golf clothing when Jason Day was at the Masters. Seen a lot of it hit up in search. Guy Colin Landforce on Instagram, great follow for all kinds of golf stuff and just general like cool stuff in general, talking about product and whatever. He looked at their search trends and all those things, and like those things matter. Like they do matter to consumers who are curious about product and are going to purchase because they have seen them or they've heard about them or any of those things. And I think that is where I've seen players win on. And it's the old saying. I'm sure I think Gene's probably said it before, talking about like golf, like when his experience in the industry as well is like what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. Like that is true. That is true, especially when not just for drivers, but I think a lot of times we saw it with putters, especially with Scotty. I know, Jonathan, you wrote about that as well. You covered that. You talked about with David there. It is like, especially with a putter too, like drivers are unique because it is like a fitting thing. It's a performance thing, like feel and alignment and all of these like elements. Like you don't have to like hit it 300 yards to feel really excited about a new putter. And I think that's where players are coming in. They're like, ooh, I want one of those because it's like $300 instead of $800, right? So there is value to winning. There is 100% value to winning. But in the fitting bay, when performance matters, it comes down to that individual every single time. But I still think it leads to trends because I'm sure you've seen it as well, Kris, whether it be shafts or not necessarily grips, but like shafts, like new stuff comes out or certain fairway woods or like a loft is available in a certain club that's not available in other clubs. You see runs from fitters where they will do a lot of them more often. And it's because they're working and they have a run of players who come in that are fitting a certain demographic, whether it be high swing speed players or lower swing speed players. Like they filter into these products that just do very well in the fitting bay. And an example like the QI10 Max, like it's freaking stable. Like it is a crazy good stable driver. And credit to TaylorMade for that like slow motion commercial that they do. Like it's a good example of like showing that kind of thing that like most companies wouldn't really show.
I'm going to offer a counter argument here, especially in relation to Scheffler. I think that when you have mega success, you have Tiger at his peak effect in that Tiger didn't move the needle on a lot of Nike equipment during his peak. And I heard this comment so many times, that guy could win with anything. Like he's so hot, he's so good, he could win with anything. And I think that I agree with what everyone's saying. Yes, brand awareness, absolutely, and everything. But I think you can actually become too successful to matter. That you are so successful that people look at you as otherworldly. And one of the points of golf equipment is, especially with the tour, is aspirational. That we're all looking up the pyramid. But when that aspirational point is literally a North Star, you're like, oh, I'm not like that. I mean, that's just crazy what he's doing. And that was kind of Tiger at his peak. And there simply wasn't enough credit given to his equipment. And I know because I was testing a lot of it and working with it. Man, those Nike engineers were putting in a lot of long hours to make sure that he had the best equipment, the best balls, etc. But it wasn't translating just because he was so incredibly successful. There was a detachment from this otherwise what I'll call delusional state that, we think that by following the tour, that's going to, affect our game and make us a better player. And so it's just interesting. If he wins the Grand Slam, I see almost an inverse effect, like a dulling, because the guy's otherworldly at that point. And so at that point, nobody really cares what he has in his hands and what he's hitting, just because he's doing things that even other tour players simply can't do.
I go ahead, Kris. Yeah, because your point's probably more than mine, better than mine.
Well, I was just kind of piggybacking off of Gene, got my wheels turning a little bit, and I think about like, okay, number one players in the world, how much do they move the needle? Are they a good barometer? And I started thinking about specifically like Justin Rose. Justin Rose, the 2018, 2019 number one player in the world, and you look at okay, he's number one player in the world, and he was TaylorMade staffer, and I mean, essentially, once you get to that point, there's only one direction you can go from there. And it begs the question, like, okay, so how much stock do you put in this player now that they've essentially peaked? How long do they stay there before they start to trend? And now you get that point of diminishing returns. And, do the viewers look at that as something that is, hey, he's playing this well because of equipment, or is this a hot streak that inevitably is going to fade and they fall by the wayside? It wasn't long after Rosie's #1 world ranking that TaylorMade was like, hey, only place you're going to go now is down. And we saw him jump ship and go to Hanma. So it's like, and how well did he play with Hanma, and how long did he hang on to that #1
There's
spot?
a lot more to that story that I wish we
He
could
won
just-
with Hanma though. He won
You
at
could
Torrey
tell.
Pines. I will always say that. Like, they will always be like
he
related
won.
to
He
Justin
won at
Rose.
Torrey Pines because of the putter in his bag.
Yeah.
The axis.
Oh, did he only play with his putter?
Just his
Yeah.
putter. That was
Did
it.
he?
One-
Did he?
one
just
club.
So
putter off a tee and
teed
everything.
up- he teed
Yeah,
up with
yeah.
his putter.
Yeah, where were you on that one, Gene?
No one
You
can
didn't watch
give
that?
credit.
See, I'm
Did you
usually
not
at the
remember that
PGA
tournament?
show when Torrey goes
14
down. I
putters,
wish I would have
Gene.
watched that.
14 putters. You
Wow.
missed it. You missed the.
It was
That's
during
awesome.
Coachella. You were don't worry about it. It was Coachella
He
week.
was
There's
taking
too much red
too much
wine,
E.
sunsets. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Too much
Don't
The
worry about it.
people will always give Hanma like crap, or like they give Justin Rose crap, and they say like he killed Hanma or whatever. That's me editorializing. Obviously, it's what I hear people say all the time. But the real brand killer we never really talk about was Nick Price. Nick Price would join a brand and it would die within a year. Like you go back and look at the brands that Nick Price was sponsored by post being like world #1. It was like, Nick Price is our new signee. The company's gone in a year. Like you could, it happened like 3 or 4 times.
Right.
It literally happened like 3 or 4 times. So, and then he ended up, which is like going back to the Tiger comment, which I think is very interesting, is like towards the end of his career, he was still playing very well. It was kind of the transition to the Pro V1. So like he was kind of caught in that like era there. And I'll always remember this from like a What's in the Bag article, was he was using blades designed by Impact Technologies, which for those who don't know was Tom Stites' company out of Fort Worth, which became Nike Golf, which is now not that it is Artisan Golf. Like they started something completely new, but now Artisan is something that is completely different. And it's the same people that made the clubs for Tiger Woods and all the other Nike athletes, and not just Tiger Woods. So let's like be clear about that. But they've found this very interesting niche because of like the story behind that versus the Nike branding towards golf clubs, which I think is very different from the way that they, as Gene has said multiple times before, like they are kind of considered like a fashion company, very high end athletic fashion company, if you want to call it that. But that marketing never worked with golf clubs. But the same people are behind them that they are at Artisan, and like they're creating great product, like wonderful product. So to say like, to your point, like what moves the needle? Like, is Artisan ever going to be like a TaylorMade? No, but they don't want to be. Like, they want to be like they want to be their thing where they make the best product. Not TaylorMade doesn't make great product, but like they want to be like what they are because they are a custom shop. So it is kind of one of those weird like things where it's like, it's like if a car company died and then the engineers from that car company started making like small batch supercars, everyone's like, these supercars are sick. What happened to this other companies? Well, they didn't market them right, guys. Like that was the problem. Like the people behind the car were still great, smart people. So there's always that weird like thing, especially when it comes to equipment and gear nerds and all kinds of stuff. So
yeah. It is. I do think it's an interesting question, but I have to say I am not surprised from Chris's response. I'm also not surprised by the success of the QI10 product. I know that Colin Morikawa switched recently from his sim into QI10, and we saw it. I mean, I still remember Gene and I sitting down for dinner at his pad, poring over the numbers, and we were both kind of chuckling because it's like, these numbers right? Is this driver really that good off the toe? Like zero distance loss? And then it's like, this one actually gained distance, like 2.5 yards. So we started to see some very interesting trends, some positive trends with the TaylorMade drivers after, Stealth didn't do all that bad, but the Stealth 2 product, in my opinion, that it did fall off from the rest of the pack. And when I say the rest of the pack, I mean the rest of the OEMs. Yeah. And you really saw them come back with a vengeance in year 3 for Carbon. So credit to them. But yeah, I would agree with Kris though. I think especially in today's age where fitting is such an important component of the purchase, for $600 driver, and we're not even throwing in the custom shafts at that point. So even more than that, you don't want to go in blind and buy a driver. So I do see the benefits. And again, True Spec's great because they don't really care. They're brand agnostic. So anyway, I do think that it was a fun chat there on Scotty and whether he has any pull on, selling golf clubs. But let's get into one more topic before we do our interview. And this is going straight off of something that this is like the most gear nerd thing that RB has ever done since he's been here. And I love it. So he started asking around for all the grip specs for the top players in the world from the different brands. And he's been posting them on golf.com. RB, you've done Ping so far in Titleist. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. And I have specs from my friend Mr. Johnny Wonder at Callaway, which will be going out. And then
he's going to be bringing them out. Yeah.
We're just waiting for TaylorMade.
Yeah.
You guys, we've had the conversation. I know they're working on it. I know it's just kind of one of those things they want to get all the players, and including Nelly Korda as well, which is kind of like one of the players we've asked for. Same with Brooks.
We don't spend enough time talking about grips, and I do think it's one of.
And this was not, by the way, this was not because it was like we are sponsored by Golf Pride. I was digging into this because I was like, I started getting real curious because I see all this every time I walk into a tour van. They have this like little library of like all these players' specs, and it's like this is kind of interesting. And Shipley too, which I thought was fascinating. Ping had posted about it. He did his own damn grips at the Masters in the Ping truck. Yeah. So that's cool. Pretty cool. Like some guys do that. They like to have that control. I'm kind of one of those weirdos that likes to do it. So that's why I started digging in, because I know there's some interesting ones out there.
So why don't we get into the interesting ones and maybe some interesting, trends, some things that you picked up on while looking at the grip builds of the best players in the world.
I would say that one thing that is golfers tend to default to what they have on their clubs, but there was more mid-size than I expected. Now I know that we can make the argument for golfers or athletes, and bigger athletes have been attracted to golf, like Ludwig and Wyndham, although Wyndham's not like a huge guy, but I'm pretty sure he's using them. I got to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure he's using mid-size as well. And so it goes to show that like players are looking for different ways that their club feel. I think Tom Kim uses different grips on his irons versus his wedges. So he's like me. I like a rib grip on my irons. I don't necessarily always use them on my wedges. I definitely don't use them on my woods. So there's always this like give and take of like what's working for certain players. You got players like guys at Ping who are just like, Bubba's always the ridiculous one example. Like he's just using baseball bats. Finau's another one. They're
13
enormous.
And 12, 13 wraps underneath the lower and 12 underneath the upper.
The one thing that I really liked seeing, and I explain it. So like every article, it's not that there's a template. Oh, there's a template now. But when I was trying to explain to people is like trying to explain core size is so difficult, because this is the thing that golfers don't realize when they're ordering certain shafts. And we used to see this with like the Matrix, some of the Matrix product, like back in the day would be like 0.6. So we're talking shaft outside diameter. See, we're down the wormhole in nerdiness now, folks. Shaft outside diameter at the butt end of like a Matrix TP6 HD, which was like the very, very high end shaft that they offered. It was like the first like $1,000 shaft, blah, blah, blah. It was like $650. So you put a standard 600 grip on a 650. Well, it feels like it has 5 wraps of tape on it. So someone pick up their driver and they go, why is this grip like funky? It's like, well, first of all, I can stretch it for you. So it's going to look different, but it's going to be a different size, but it's going to feel a different firmness. Will Zalatoris, as well as another couple of players, are playing 580 core grips on what are mostly 600 shafts. So now you've got a grip that feels like it has 2 wraps of tape on it underneath. It it feels a little thinner, so it gets a little firmer. And then if you put an extra wrap of tape under it, now you've got a firmer grip that's actually feels like 3 wraps, so it's only got 2 wraps or 1 wrap. So there's all of these different elements that come together. But the mid-size thing to me is the biggest one, because I think the way that players are less wristy now, and the technique that's trained into the modern golf swing, that players have gone to a larger size versus seeing players go to smaller sizes. And it's not dependent on hand size. This is one of the biggest things that I think people don't think about. You are someone who, and I know we are an audio medium, but if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm also going to be showing this on. If you are someone who grips in your fingers and more along the kind of the top end between like your fingers and the top of your palm, you're most likely going to be using a smaller grip because of where it's situated. But as that grip moves from the kind of insertion point where it would touch your hand, and it goes more towards the base, or like the kind of really palmy, meaty part of your hand at the whatever you would call that underneath your pinky finger, like someone like Bryson, who gets that thing right across his hand rather than into his fingers, and you're someone who's using less hand action, well, you can use basically any grip size you want. Like, use something that's like comfortable versus trying to, like, that's where the grip size thing is so dependent on how a player grips. And these faster players, stronger players, are going to these bigger grips. And I think that, to me, is one of those things where that seems to be the trend. There's very few players who are just using 1 wrap. There are a number of them, but most players are using some sort of, there's a lot more mid-size than I thought, basically, is what I thought. And talking about players who are not like big dudes like Finau or Bubba, like just guys who like that style grip because they're just gripping it and ripping it, and that's what works for them.
Well, so I've got a physics theory behind this, and stick with me, audience, because this is going to get a little geeky, but we're already in grip. So if you're still listening, hey, you're into it.
Yep. I've got input too.
So club head speed is measured in miles per hour, and it's basically 2 points usually that's measured to determine how fast you're swinging. The one thing that most golfers don't think about is you swing on an arc. And what I mean by that is your club face starts open. Ideally, it's square at impact, and then it closes as it comes through. That is defined as closure. So even a putter, you pull a putter back because you're swinging about yourself, you have closure on a putter. It can be very slight, or it can actually be decent. Tiger's got a decent amount of closure on his putter, and so the club face is closing, and you're kind of working the ball. The reason I bring all this up, Callaway highlighted this to me years ago, and I think it sums it up for anybody that follows golf and follows swings. Closure is measured in degrees per second. And they told me this about 10, 12 years ago or so. They measured Jim Furyk, and Jim Furyk had a closure rate of 1,000 degrees per second, which is really low. So it's now, let's back up a second here. The best way to hit a golf ball, if you could, would be on a pendulum with 0 closure. Because if you have 0 closure, it guarantees the ball is going to go dead straight. So as that club face is closing, it comes down to timing. So Furyk had a closure rate of 1,000 degrees per second. Phil Mickelson, a closure rate of 2,000 degrees per second. Phil Mickelson had to be twice as accurate as Jim Furyk to hit the same shot. Now, what's interesting, and I've talked to Sasha McKenzie about this, is he sees no difference in accuracy between 1,000 and 2,000. And my theory is, at 2,000, you have to have the ability, hand-eye coordination, to square that club. So you're only swinging that way if you can square it due to your hand-eye coordination. The reason I bring all this up, grips are the one way to mitigate closure. The bigger the grip size, the less you're going to rotate it. So if you have fast hands, or you're a tour player and you fear the snap hook, A bigger grip is going to minimize that, and your miss is going to be a block right, but it's less likely to be a snap hook because it's less likely that you're going to turn that club over as quickly as a small grip. So there is a physics component to this, that if you look at these swings, RB, like you were, describing with players and things like that, I think you will see. And I talked to Bryson about this. Bryson plays these big old jumbo grips. Why?
I was going to bring Bryson up.
The snap hook is what he lives in fear of. And so he wants this minimal, and he is well acquainted with closure and understands it. And he understands, I mean, think about it. Think about trying to close a telephone pole versus a reed, right? It's kind of the same thing. The bigger the object is in your hands, the harder it is to rotate it close. And by having more resistance, you're less likely to snap hook. So there's a definite, whether or not the players truly understand it, there's a definite cause and effect as far as grip size and the ability to rotate that club.
Kris, I know you had a point that you wanted to make.
To piggyback off of Gene, there's been a lot of studies done with grips and fitting and grips and size and density and texture. And in a 3D environment, when you start measuring, the one thing that can't be accounted for is the human element. And it's been said that the uncontrolled variable of human element being introduced is where there's a really big gray area. The physics component is very linear as far as the size of the grip and limiting the rate of rotation. But then you introduce that unknown variable of human, and you have different people that have different interpretations of size, density, and textures. And dependent upon whom the individual is that is swinging the club, the swing weight of the club, the length of the club, how the club feels in their hand, they will take a large grip, a small grip, a tacky grip, a relatively firm grip, and squeeze and release and flip differently dependent upon the individual. So as we start to get into grip fitting, the very elementary approach that we have is if it feels comfortable in your hand the way that you swing it, then it's the right answer. Because you'll have players that have very fast release patterns that you put a large grip in their hand, and then they subconsciously feel like they can't square the face, and you see the rate of rotation and their release pattern actually speed up, and they start to introduce more dynamic loft, and they start to essentially accelerate how fast it is that they intentionally release the club through impact. And then you'll have people on the other end of the spectrum. So the human element being introduced into this physiological world of size, density, and texture is always an unknown variable. So at the end of the day, like, I always default to, does it feel good in your hand? Yes, that's the grip you need.
I find this so fascinating. Like just this whole conversation about like rate of rotation, and like one of the things that, and I know G wants to say something too, but that I always look at, especially now that RB has been releasing this treasure trove of grip specs. When I was talking to Tony Finau, he mentioned, he could have gone to an oversized grip. He plays a mid-sized lambkin, but he really likes stretching out that rubber to give it a very firm feel, which is why he has so many wraps of tape, kind of similar to Bubba Watson. They just like a firmer feel, and they're two different ways to go about it. You can play a mid-sized grip and maybe have fewer wraps, but it's going to feel a bit squishier at times in your hands, depending on what grip it is. Or you could play a standard and try and build it up into a mid-size with the tape wraps underneath. It's going to stretch out that rubber, and it's going to make it feel very firm. Some guys like that. So again, going back to Kris's point about like feel being a very important part of that, like that's one of the things that I was looking at, is how many guys are using a standard but building it up to maybe make it feel like a mid-size versus the guys that are just playing a straight up mid-size with fewer wraps. So, because me speaking like as just a hack golfer, I like a mid-size grip, but I build it up with more wraps underneath my lower hand to give it a bit of a firmer feel. So kind of from the Finau camp. Anyway, I know Gene wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to piggyback on what Kris said because we're piggybacking on each other. Michael Verska at Callaway said something interesting years ago, and he's subsequently, kind of doubled down on it that, with shaft testing, they see the same thing, that a high launch shaft in some players will be low launching and a low launch shaft will be high launching. And, I had my own kind of interesting moment at the PGA show this year. So I brought the robot out with Foresight, and we were doing all these demonstrations for their new GC Quad Max. And I had all these long drive guys next to me. They were coming in, they were averaging 195 to, on the high end 220 on ball speed. I mean, it was just bonkers. And they were all playing like weak R's and, and ladies flex shafts and things like that. And, and I was sitting there and I was joking with them. I'm like, you guys have screwed up the shaft game so badly, as far as the stiffer, the more consistent and the longer. And they've proven with timing, you can actually go more flexible to hit the ball further. So it is my world is somewhat contained in that I'm able to conduct these experiments and see results. But to Kris's point, the human element, what's so fascinating about the golf swing is when you're handed something, subconsciously you do something else. That's what's so wild about it, is you're being told that this club does this, and so your brain tries to auto correct for that or does something, and there's no way to discern why that is happening. It's more trying to fit to that player's reaction to that club and understanding that. And that's why I think fitting's so important. But it's wild because without a doubt, a bigger, heavier object is harder to rotate, and yet some people do it. And that's what's really interesting about it. And in that same meeting that I had with Callaway, where they were showing that, they said that there's no necessarily correlation between closure rate and clubhead speed. So you could have guys that have 2,200 degrees of closure and are swinging 78 miles an hour, and guys that have 900 degrees of closure and are swinging 125 miles an hour. So you usually you think the faster you're swinging, the more something's closing. No, a guy can be blocking it as they come through with a really high rate of clubhead speed, or a guy can be falling back on his heels and just flipping his hands over and barely generating any clubhead speed. So the human element is really wild to look at and see, how players generate their delivery conditions, and then how we in the golf world try to kind of analyze that and figure out how to make the game more enjoyable for them.
The reason this came to be, and I was thinking about this, was because when I was at Golf Pride earlier or end of last year for the reverse, they were showing us the reverse taper. Is they had this picture where golf Pride's headquarters in Pinehurst. They have this great opportunity to talk to regular golfers all the time, like all the time. It is a really cool place to be from a testing perspective because of what they're doing. So they had this picture, and it was this looked like a checkerboard picture, and it's golfers holding their grip up with their putter in front of their face. So they're holding the putter head up to the sky and they're holding it up. And to Kris's point, it's like they literally documented hundreds of ways that people grip their putter, hundreds of ways. And they tried to categorize it. And that's where to get to the point where they developed the reverse taper as the example, it's well over a year, it's almost 2 years in development because of trying to figure out what works and styles and all this stuff. And that's where the golf, even just for golfers, it is this fascinating element of how golfers grip their club. There are standard ways to grip their club, what feels very different. And then you get to the putter. I know we're going to touch on this very shortly with the interview with Austie from Titleist and Scotty Cameron, is they have a new grip on the Phantom series that was developed. And it was like, it's so much about texture. It's not just about the size, because it is a different shape. It's a slightly different size, but it's the texture, that how it feels in your hands. And that is not something that they just like, let's try it, right? Like, that was, by the way, I just want to make note, like, for those who are like, I was a fart sound effect. That was not actually like,
I was about to say, what was that?
that was a fart sound. That was a fart sound effect. Like, they didn't just pull it out of thin air, right? Like, this was something that like they put so much time in, because everyone's perception is so different. And that's why I do find, like, I seriously find why I wanted to dig into this so much, because there are grips that I put on clubs and I'm like, this isn't even going to last a range session. Like, if someone says something, I'm going to try it. Like, this is not going to work. This isn't good. So golfers, when they go through this process and they're looking at stuff, it's just fascinating to see how all these different preferences and sizes and textures and wraps and tapers that people build into grips, because I've done them, I've broken it down into tapers, even with the amount of tape. It's just fascinating, and that's why I think it is such an interesting topic.
One last thing that I did want to point out really quick, going through this list, and again, this is not, Golf Pride is a sponsor of this podcast, but this grip segment is not sponsored by them. But I do need to point out, Golf Pride dominated this list. There were 3 guys so far on the 2 stories that RB released on Grip Specs for Ping and Titleist. 3 guys: Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, and Bubba Watson. Those are the 3 non-Golf Pride guys. Everybody else is a Golf Pride grip. And I know they're basically like the Titleist Pro V1 equivalent in the grip space. I mean, they have a major stranglehold at the tour level, but my goodness, it's like you see it as you're going down the list, and it's like, yeah, Golf Pride is it when it comes to grips on tour. And that'll do it for episode 238 of Fully Equipped. As always, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe. We have more fun content coming, but as always, we do have the weekly Fully Equipped podcast coming your way on the YouTube channel and wherever you consume your podcasts. If you want more social goodness from us, you can check us out on Instagram. We are also at Fully Equipped Golf. And on Twitter, we are at Fully_Equipped. And thank you, listeners, for listening to this week's episode. We'll see you next week.